polls of such to actually stay in their whatever district they want to run, and they will find ways around things, as I say, often and always. She is currently running. She's currently on the Committee for Natural Resources and the committee for the House Committee on the Budgets. The budget is a very powerful committee, and usually somebody on the budget committee has some very big dollars behind them. She is only a first term, and this next term she has a lot of Democrats primarying each other. There's two people going against her, and she won her district mildly narrowly, 51 to 45, with the Libertarians taking 2.5 in the Union Party, which if anybody knows what that is, go ahead and throw that out there. I haven't heard of the Union Party before. I'm not sure if that's a statewide thing or nationwide. And with that year, she did take the incumbent. She went in there and took over the incumbent. The area was already red, but she went in there and ran for it anyway. That means, yes, you can primary somebody. Just because you're going to be a Democrat doesn't mean you don't, like, oh, there's a Democrat in the seat already, I guess I can never run. No, you're supposed to primary people. You're supposed to push them and see if their public policy matches the vote. She did it. She ran. She took it. So that is her first vote, first seat. Now she is running for re-election. Once she gets re-election, she gets lifetime benefits, and that doesn't necessarily mean a good thing. So we'll check out Open Secrets, and Laura Boebert got some money, of course. Yeah, I'll just take that back. So the House Freedom Fund, again, I'm going to remind you guys, the House Freedom Fund, that is a Republican mega millionaire fund that's mostly they do for first-time elections. They won't do it a second cycle, but she raised $6.5 million for a congressional fund. She's raised $6.5 million, spent $4.5 million. Now, usually $2 to $4 million for a Congress seat is plenty. So she raised a ton of money. And again, that House Freedom Fund is usually definitely connected with high-end Republicans giving tons of money for access. Hillcorp Energy and a real estate investment and a venture capitalist investment. So real estate, venture capitalist, and then a mega energy company and a mega congressional fund here. So that's a lot of big money in one little person. She has a big voice already. They definitely give her a voice. They prop her up so that Republican, conservative, and real estate, oil and gas, like I said, energy group, and then the leadership's PAC. That's the big money from big Republican donors. And yeah, she raised a lot her first year. So this last election, she hasn't needed to raise so much because she's got a lot of cash left over. $2 million left over from her last run. So that is plenty to run on in her district for a re-election, going against a lot of primaries over there. And when you look at this, the U.S. Department of Treasury gave her money. Blue Cross Blue Shield, the U.S. government, like how is she getting so much money from the government is a wonderful question to ask. So yeah, insurance companies, real estate companies, energy companies, and super PACs. Sounds like good, clean, unattached money. You know she's going to represent the people. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And she lives in Colorado. So we think of Colorado, everybody there's pretty much got to be to legal marijuana by this point because they're in Colorado, right? Like, you would have to be legal, but you'd have to be for legal marijuana if you're going to be in Colorado. Well, let's look at her record here. This is pretty great. She is not for ending cannabis prohibition federally. She's not for expunging past cannabis convictions. So that means she's okay with people in her state being in jail for pot 20 years ago when it's been legal for 15. Like, that's what she's okay with. She does not want to reinvest in communities with that money. She's okay with states to legalize the adult use and okay with states to legalize medical use. But my big FU to everyone is always, she's not okay with VA doctors recommending cannabis for the VA patients. How are you going to say you're for vets if you're not okay with this legislation? That is not okay. That is not acceptable. And not allowing cannabis businesses to use banks in the state of Colorado. Guess what? You're screwing yourself on legitimate money, on legitimate taxes, on like, what are you doing? You're trying to hurt capitalism. You're supposed to be pro-capitalism. You're a Republican. Ooh, okay. So that was that one. So I have never seen this person speak. I saw the first 3 seconds of this about 7 or 8 times, and I've not actually watched a full one through. So let us experience what this is, what Money has to say.
Congresswoman Lauren Boebert.
What's up, Armed? I was just trying to tell you that, so these are my old Stony Progressive takedowns from Congress people before I started on Twitch. I started streaming a few months before I did Twitch. And I was on YouTube for like 5 years doing video clips. So this is that before I started on Twitch. A couple of the big timers. And yeah, for the interviews today, let's see here. We got Nina Turner with Jordan Sheridan, Kashama Sawant with Brianna Joy Gray, and then Joe Rogan with David Pakman. That was from May of 22, so 2 years ago now. I apologize, but I like doing debate of social media censorship. It's a relevant topic right now, right? So I like bringing stuff that's a relevant topic back. So this is from 2 years ago, but it's relevant right now. So it's a debate. It's not necessarily beef, but it should be a pretty good conversation. And again, it's interesting to take something from 2 years ago and see how it relates still to today. And then we're doing the John Oliver show from last week with police. I have a bunch of other videos about police. And then I'm always open to other things. But yeah, this was my Stony Progressive takedown of Lauren Boebert, going over her bullshit. And it's interesting to see stuff I did 3 months ago, 4 months ago. Yeah. So I'm getting other things set up. You can keep watching me from the past, and it's weird for me to watch myself from the past. So I am getting a bowl ready. Good to see you again.
Here. For the last year, it has been such an honor to represent each and every one of you in Colorado's 3rd Congressional District. I ran for office to preserve our God-given liberties and freedom.
I wonder if we could ask her if she actually knows where that district is, because she probably lives somewhere else.
And deliver real results. Today, I want to update you on what we were able to accomplish together for the 3rd District in 2021. First, it has been a priority for myself and my amazing team to meet with you, hear from you, and whenever we can, go to bat for you. In that effort, we've worked over 655 cases for constituents as they've encountered issues with federal agencies and secured more than $400,000 in federal benefits to which.
When you say the past, you mean like childhood when you don't have to pay bills, or like you want to be back to the days when police could beat people without being videoed, or I don't know. There's definitely things that accountability is better right now than ever before. Even though corporate media is trying to keep independent media down, there are good journalists out there, and because of things like the internet, we can leak those things. And big time operations do get, leaks happen now more than they did back in the day.
Or other federal agencies,
pretty much all that.
Please contact my office.
I like the leaks and stuff.
I also know
I'm not a big fan of the.
If I don't know what's on your mind,
I like the idea of simpler times. I like going up.
And 62
10 years ago. Yeah, I mean, censorship is getting out of control, and that's why I wanted to bring that subject back up again.
I'd encourage you to go to my website.
I can even see it on my small scale, so.
And sign up to get news updates from my office. We send
But
out a weekly email with
I
our
like the
mobile
simpler
office
life.
hours,
When I go
as
up
well
north,
as a weekly
I don't have
recap
much
on
internet.
how I'm serving you.
Much smaller town I
I've
live
also been
in,
delivering on some other
and
important victories for rural
I live a farm life,
Coloradans.
so it's
I led the Colorado
that
federal
life
delegation in
is
securing
rewarding.
emergency
It's very
assistance
fulfilling.
to get I-70
That style of
repaired and
less
reopened
information
following this year's
all the time,
catastrophic mudslide.
less internet,
I
less
secured $13 million for the
24/7 everything
U.S.
around you.
Forest Service to address bark beetle infestations that have ravaged Colorado and contributed to catastrophic wildfires. I secured $10 million for the Indian Irrigation Fund for the benefit of the Southern Ute Tribe's Pine River Indian Irrigation Project. I secured an important win for 6 counties in the San Luis Valley by ensuring data from their new radar system is incorporated into the National Weather Service system. For over a year,
Ugh, she's
That
unbearable.
sounds fun. I know we just saw this, so it's gonna keep improving.
Oh, let's do another video that goes over her.
I love those advertisements.
Recently, Republican Representative
Yep, going over the more of the Bobert. More of the Bobert. Internet is killing people and we're all just letting it happen. Kind of bullshit. Oh, she's a weird one. Oh, that was my midnight. Close enough. It's close enough to midnight. Ready for some debates? I mean, for some interviews. Last night my freaking computer crashed on me, so I made sure I just turned it on right before the show. No overheating tonight. I swear, at least once a week I have something. I've had the internet just completely shut off our entire block. I've had my apartment's internet shut off randomly. I've had the power shut off randomly. During the middle of the stream, this 2 months I've been doing this has been an interesting test of patience. So, thanks for hanging out, and let's do some Sunday night interviews. Move on. Gonna be quicker interviews. I'm not gonna sit on any interview for like a whole hour plus tonight. That's not gonna happen. Yeah, nothing's gonna be that long. Even the Joe Rogan, David Pakman's only a half hour, so that'll be perfect. But I want to start out with Nina Turner, because that is an important name, and also when I go over the Joe Rogan show, I have to cut the YouTube stream. So let's do the things we're allowed to do first before I cut the YouTube stream tonight. See if any of my followers over there come on. I can try to push them over to Twitch, where I'm not fucking censored.
Presidential campaign
Not as censored. Twitch censors me, but nothing like YouTube.
in 2020 and was also out across the country in 2016 for Senator Sanders. And you're now running again for Cleveland's 11th district in Ohio against now Congresswoman Shontel Brown. My first question, because I was out there over the dead of summer last year, that special election. And, you know, honestly, I didn't really know what to expect because I felt a whole lot of Cleveland didn't even know there was an election going on.
That is true.
In the beginning. So let's talk about the differences now, because obviously,
But yeah, we definitely need a freaking less censored, less corporate owned internet. It was better when YouTube was independent people and not like pushed algorithmically by the CNN. By the CNNs
about
and
4,000 votes last
MSNBCs.
time. Most people might not know this, that 5,000 to 8,000 Republicans voted for
That's
Shontel
right.
Brown. Tell me what feels different and what your campaign is doing different this time in a traditional primary on May 3rd.
We're running a field first campaign, Jordan. That is the number one difference between last time and this time, really analyzing the areas that we could have done, the areas where we could improve, and that was it. And we've been on the ground since the middle part of February. And you know, in Cleveland, it's still snowing and it's still pretty cold, knocking doors.
All right.
We have had over 100,000.
First bowl of the stream. It's after midnight, so first bowl of the day, right? Only bowl for the stream, because after that I'm going to CBD roaches with some wax, because I am running low on flour. Fucking Florida's new rules. I can only get so much. It's a rolling total. It's fucking all these loopholes you got to go through for your medical card. It's stupid.
Voter contacts because of the deep work that we have been doing. The energy for us is palpable. That was not necessarily the case last time. As you laid out in the middle of the summer, people not knowing there was a special election happening. That's different. People do know. Although I will say, and I'm very disappointed because I'm a pro vote. People get out there to vote. We are seeing and articles have pointed to the fact that this too is going to be a low voter turnout election. Although we have a competitive gubernatorial race and other constitutional offices, as well as a competitive U.S. Senate race
Can't
because
start a show
Senator
without a
Rob
drink.
Portman is
Jesus,
not
Todd.
running again. I think it is a reflection of people being overwhelmed and feeling, feeling suffocated by what is happening in the economy with all of the
All right, let's fucking start this motherfucker.
Two joints in the morning. I spoke 2 joints at night.
inflation, and then when you couple that with the pandemic, although we might not be masking up as much as we used to, the pandemic is not done with us. We may be done with the pandemic, but it's not done with us.
Right. Last time, in addition to Democratic majority for Israel spending millions of dollars to make you look anti-Semitic, in addition to billboards and TV ads suffocating, I literally couldn't drive around Cleveland without seeing these billboards attacking you for not bowing down in loyalty to Joe Biden 100% of the time. I find it interesting because Chantel Brown has been a congresswoman for about 5 minutes. She's not completely going along with exactly what President Biden policy agenda is. In fact, she has basically been signing on with others to try and continue obstructing America re-entering the Iran nuclear deal.
That's exactly right, with 17 other of her colleagues there. So yeah, she's not walking 100% lockstep, and it's ludicrous on its face. When people elect members of Congress, they elect members to do their bidding, not the bid. And most of the time, that bidding it will probably be in line with the administration. There will be times when it will not, and you got to stand up for your people. Now, when it comes to the Iran deal, hey, shame on her for not signing up, being in support of that. That was the signature, one of the signature foreign policies for then President Barack Obama. President Trump was wrong to get out of that agreement. I definitely applaud President Biden for working to get back into that agreement. We have to continue to work for peace all over the globe. And that agreement is one way of doing just that. But she didn't sign on to it. And not only is the Democratic majority for Israel, they were in deep, as you know, spending almost $3 million combined with the super PACs between them, AIPAC, Third Way. They're back at it again, Jordan. And I want your viewers to know they just plopped down $2 million between those two. And I'm finding out Third Way is back in it again. So before all is said and done, we might be back at about $2.5 to $3 million in an effort to try to defeat me. And the effort to defeat me is bigger than me. I'm just a conduit, and I understand that very clearly. This is first and foremost about the movement, the progressive movement itself. And they, the powers that be, those who believe in the status quo, they'll do anything that they can to try to defeat that, try to defeat our movement. And I do want the voters of the greater Cleveland area to understand that no outside force should be able to come in here and tell us who is going to be our leader. The DMF IPAC is being funded by an oil baroness, for example. So that might be explain why Ms. Brown has not signed on to the robust Green New Deal policies that are percolating through the United States House of Representatives at this time. And the cryptocurrency billionaire, he plopped down $1 million of his own. And not just here in this district, Jordan, he's doing it all over the country. So representative democracy itself, whether it's the 11th district here in Ohio or the 11th district in California, I'm just making this a broader example, those of us who believe that the people of their respective community should be able to make that decision, those of us who believe in fighting for democracy itself and not just the individual who you want to vote for, we should all feel the threat that
Yeah, why is it that Silicon billionaires and New York Wall Street billionaires are the ones that buy all of our politicians? Why isn't it anyone in the actual area that fucking get to pick who the representatives are? How come it's dollars from out of state that always picks these freaking politicians?
That has swirled upon us since Citizens United.
And let me ask you, because I want to just clear the air on something. A lot of critics said, well, I'd vote for Nina, but she should have run Green Party, or she should have run independent, or this and that. My understanding is Green Party is not on the ballot anymore in Ohio.
No.
Obviously, I mean, you could skip the primary, I guess, and run as an independent, but you'd probably lose by 30 or 40 in that district. So what was the actual options for you to run in a primary and to win, I should say, in that
The
district?
one I'm taking now, Jordan, the one, and thank you. You have been masterful at explaining this to our other colleagues in the movement, that in certain districts, and this is one of them, that is not an option if we want to be competitive. We want to win. I'm not doing this just for practice here. I want to win because the progressive movement needs more leaders like myself who actually have the levers of power that can push our agenda. This is what this is about. This district is a solidly Democratic district. My county, Cuyahoga County itself, votes about 5 or 6 to 1 Democrat. So there is no way that an independent will not win.
Okay, now does that necessarily equivocate? Are those two things equal? Does that mean because you don't have a lot of people voting outside of the Democratic Party, does that mean a third party can't run? Has it been tested? Have people run in that district? Third party, Green Party, independent? Have people run heavily and tried? Or has there been like a couple of people that had like $20,000, had no real actual backing? They tried and failed. Because you never know what, like, huge sections, huge red counties could go Libertarian. Huge blue counties could go Green Party. It is absolutely turnable. They're absolutely flippable.
The movement has some maturing to do. We got to play chess, not checkers. And so if people just want to run just to do it and say, hey, I ran, or do you want to run and win? And that may look differently in another part of the country. But for the 11th congressional district, it is solidly Democrat, and that's what people are going to vote for. They're going to have a choice between the Democrat and the Republican. But for all intents and purposes, whoever wins this primary on May 3rd will win the general election. So I am running to win and to further our progressive agenda in the halls of Congress. But that's not the only way to push the progressive agenda. We need activists and people who agitate to be on the front lines too. It is both of those things. And that's why I'm running, to complement what the movement is doing and the things that we're fighting for to change the material conditions of people in my district and in this country.
I'm glad you brought up.
She is not impressive. I'm sorry. She's fucking... She wants to join the progressive fucking movement in Congress, which already sells out to fucking Nancy Pelosi. Like, what, you want to join a sellout fucking movement? Ugh.
Because if we got to I'm not going to sugarcoat it. A lot of the progressives that activists, knocked on doors, made the calls for, donated to get in there, their version of agitating has been to write letters to President Biden, asking him kindly on student loan debt cancellation and climate, or getting meetings with his chief of staff as victories. But they have not chosen to agitate, in my view, whether you chalk it up to naivete or political threats that have been made. That you're going to get backbenched. You won't have these committee assignments, whatever it is. The squad, to a lesser degree, Bernie. What if you get elected? Because you mentioned winning. What should people expect? I mean, I know you pretty well. I don't really think you're going in there to kindly write letters. But for example, right now, student loan debt. Would people be able to expect you to go to publicly challenge the president to cancel student loan debt, to be out there with activists? We could go down the list, the climate protests, this and that. I think what people are looking for is not just progressives that share our policy vision, but actually have a strategy to fight and exert power once in Congress.
That's exactly right, Jordan. And I understand that and I feel that. But that's not to say that I am going to agree with every tactic that the movement agrees with. But I've already, by way of example, been out there for the debt for the cancellation of student debt. And I want to shout out in this moment the Debt Collective. I was invited to be with them. It's probably been about 3 weeks ago now. We were in D.C. in front of the Education Department's building. And it was a beautiful sight to see activists from all over the country stand in solidarity with one another to say to the president, send a message to the Secretary of Education that this debt can be canceled. So yeah, I was there See, I haven't stopped, Jordan. That's really what I want this movement to understand, that even though I am running for this seat, I didn't win it last time, but that didn't stop me. I've been side by side with Sherwin-Williams workers right here in my district, side by side with the Starbucks workers in my district, and have been requested to go all over the country. I went to New York too to stand side by side with those Starbucks workers, with the Amazon workers. You know, Bessemer got this party started. I'm so proud and happy, and I know that is cool. You all have been out there from the beginning. A Christian Smalls doing the daggone thing under some intense situations when people counted him out. He was doing the work. I too have been and continue to do the work, whether I have that extra special title or not, because I believe in the mission to help change material conditions of the people of this great nation, starting with my district. But I do understand this, Jordan, that what happens over there happens over here. That's why I went to Bessemer, Alabama. What happens over there happens over here. I was invited even after the special election last year by some of our sisters and brothers over in the UK. Why? Because they see my fight. That is what it is. So I'm not going to change that. Yes, when the president needs to be challenged, I am going to challenge. When there are things that we agree on, I'm going to be right there too. For example, the Iran nuclear deal that the current congressperson decided, oh, she's not for it, with 17 other Democrats. One of the signature foreign policies of President Barack Obama. President Trump did the wrong thing by getting us out of the deal. Glad to see President Biden fighting to get us back in the deal. That is something that he and I would agree on, and that I would be there. So it's not this, we're going to be fighting all the time, but when it comes down to making sure that there is the sufficient fight for what will help my constituents and other people in this country, whether it's canceling student debt. I'm not changing on Medicare for all. I'm not the one that just signed on to it conveniently. Check my record. I've been out there fighting for it, confronting power for it. And
Her record is okay. It's not like she's not a true antagonist. So that's not, I mean, she thinks she is, but her record shows that she will bend. She will be one of those sellout progressives. That's what her record shows. So, yeah.
I want to do that.
And,
yeah.
And one specific thing, I have been really just dumbfounded. I asked Congressman Ro Khanna when he came on, during this whole standoff with President Manchin, why was the progressives not out there on his doorstep? Bernie wrote an op-ed in his hometown paper, which kind of got under his skin, but there were no, protests, rallies. That I know the people of West Virginia, you'd have thousands of people showing up. Those are the kind of things when the moment matters. Should people trust? Because I've seen you on the campaign trail. I've seen you speaking to the Verizon workers and the Nissan workers in Mississippi. I mean, you've been out there when it counts. Can people expect that a Congressman Turner would, in those moments, go against Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema, even more progressive folks if they're not being aggressive enough in terms of obstruction?
Yeah, I'm doing it now. And every opportunity that I've had to interview with people like you and others in independent media and also the mainstream media, I have said so. I am on the record of saying months ago that I thought that the president should use the bully pulpit, since those two want to stand in the way of his agenda. And I'm talking about the Build Back Better portion.
But she did not support force the vote. She didn't support force the vote. So how is she really in favor of it?
The infrastructure portion, oh, that's great. That is great. We needed both of those things to happen at the same time. And I wanted to see the president use the bully pulpit because he already invited, those senators. He's been Senator Manchin, for example, went to the White House and was invited to be with the president in Delaware. He talked to Senator Sinema, all of them. They got wined and dined. Once he tried the diplomatic approach, and that's not moving the needle, then in my opinion, it was time for the president to use that bully pulpit that he has. And I said, gas up the jet, go to West Virginia, go to Arizona, let them know who's standing in the way of his agenda. That is what you can do to rally the people on your side, to put pressure on those elected officials that are not pushing the agenda that is going to be necessary to help the people. And we know that it was watered down over time, and we can't even get Democrats to do the bare minimum. So I am going to continue to do what I've done. I'm sure.
Her or me? She's a little bit of a hypocrite, I think. She's a touch sold out.
Other ways of doing things too, but being out there among the people when it, like you said, when it counts is very important to me. That is how you move it. Everything is not going to necessarily move in a straight line in the Congress, and I mean in both houses. But what people like me can do, because we have an entire movement by our side, is to activate that movement, to make the demand. That is how great change happens. It rarely does it happen because politicians, got a clue and they do it on their own. It is the confluence of the outside pressure combined with those who are working towards that people-powered agenda. I will call it affordability agenda, whatever you want to call it, the agenda that helps people live a better life. You need inside people, and you also need the outside people. And when things are not happening right on the inside, we need the people on the inside to come on out and let the people on the outside know and invite those people to use their voice to help push an agenda that will change material conditions. That is not going to change, Jordan. I've been doing that, and I will continue to do that.
I got to ask. Progressive Caucus, led by Pramila Jayapal, endorsed Congresswoman Brown. I've heard different things, that it's in their charter that they have to endorse the incumbent. I don't know about that, but I wanted to ask you, because obviously that encompasses, the squad, Ro Khanna, Jayapal. Obviously, we don't know what each person who they would or wouldn't endorse, but that honestly, to folks in the progressive movement, seems like quite the betrayal.
And the movement made their voices known on that, and I want to thank the movement for standing up. The most important endorsements that I'm getting from progressive types are coming from my district. I have the endorsement of the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus, the Stonewall.
Oh my God, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care.
And a lot of the rest of the city have been left to rot. Can you kind of talk about, for people that don't know, because they might know you nationally, what did you do as an Ohio State senator, a local Cuyahoga County politician? What were your accomplishments there in helping that poverty? Because I looked at Chantel Brown's record in Cuyahoga County and her 5 minutes in Congress. I don't really see much there.
Yeah, she hasn't done anything, by the way. Like, she's literally a voiceless, the only thing she's done is went against January 6th and said thank you for putting me in here. Like, nothing.
I was on the Cleveland City Council and also an Ohio State senator, and they're fighting for Cleveland's children, fighting to have levies passed, for example, which is a really big deal in a city that has such poverty. We were not as poor then as we are now, so I'm sorry to see us. It pains me to see us go in the opposite direction. And one of the reasons why I am running is to help get us back and even past where we were, but on the ground, not just voting the right way, Jordan, but out there fighting, knocking doors to help pass a levy so that Cleveland's children would not suffer. At a period of time, we hadn't passed a levy in like 15 years. The pressure was on. I didn't want to see teachers get laid off. I wanted to see Cleveland's children have what they needed. And to get that, had to convince a city that is suffering under the weight of poverty to understand that investing more of our property taxes to help our children be able to live out their greatest greatness is, in fact, the right thing to do. Fighting for the House of Labor, not just voting the right way. I know you remember Senate Bill 5, for example, when the Republicans railed through a bill to take away collective bargaining rights of certain unions in this state. Not only did I vote the right way on the floor of the Senate, I got out in the streets because it was important to convince voters. We have the power of referenda in the state of Ohio.
I'm not trying to say she's bad. I'm just saying that she's not perfect by any means. And yeah, I mean, I can't. I just feel like she'll be a progressive that goes right into that progressive Democratic wing that don't do anything. They don't fucking do anything.
Because we put something on the ballot does not mean that the majority of the Ohioans were going to go for it, because the majority of Ohioans are not in the union. So we had to convince our non-labor sisters and brothers that when unions are strong, it increases their wages, make their work conditions and benefits better too. And we did. And by over 60%, the people of the great state of Ohio overturned what the Republican-led and controlled legislature did. That is one of the major differences between my opponent and I. I'm not delusional about just voting on the floor of anybody, whether it was the city council or the Ohio Senate or whether it's the United States Congress. You got to get out into the streets with the people and be by their side when it counts. So from women's reproductive health to education, small businesses, when it counted, I was there, and I continue to be there, Jordan. I've never stopped. I really have been going since 2014. I ran for Secretary of State in 2014, knowing that I was going against a juggernaut in the sense that I was running against an entrenched Republican that was an incumbent.
All right, she's just she is just stroking her own boat. There's no actual pushback or questions here, huh? So it's not really an interview. They call it an interview. It was just Jordan let her platform, I guess. He's usually pretty good, but that wasn't his best work. All right, let's move on to a real socialist, actual socialist, Kwasha Sawant. She actually is a socialist. City council member of Minnesota. I believe she's trying to run for Congress, but she has been known as an actual socialist leader.
Provided a cover for the Biden administration.
And we're going to watch just not quite the first half hour of this because all of it is so solid. Can't pull it apart. At least the 2 times I watched it, I couldn't.
administration and Biden and Harris and the corporate Democrats like Pelosi and Schumer and others to carry out essentially a corporate agenda.
This instance with Nina Turner seems to be the tipping point for a lot of people to say, not only am I no longer going to invest in the Democratic Party at all, but I am also willing to openly call out Pramila Jayapal as someone who seems to be the architect of a lot of the left's failures over the course of the past 2 years.
Progressives say that they stand for those things. Every so often Pramila Jayapal will tweet out, it's time for Medicare for all. But, more and more people will respond to her on Twitter and say, okay, but what did you do? Like when it was time to fight for it, you gave Biden cover. How does that work? We should have the confidence that working people, once all the issues are presented to them, will have the understanding of what's in their own interest.
I'm so glad to be joined today by Seattle City Councilwoman Shama Sawant, no stranger to this podcast. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Brianna.
So a lot has happened since you were last here, and I want the bulk of this conversation to be about the unionizing efforts and successes by Starbucks employees, which you have been involved in talking a lot about. There was the first successful union campaign on the West Coast in Seattle just a couple of weeks ago. And of course, we've seen successful unionizing efforts in about, I think, 20 chains across the country. But first, so many of our listeners are so kind of inspired and galvanized by the approach Socialist Alternative has taken to politics, and your emphasis in past interviews on the accountability between yourself as a member of Socialist Alternative and the organization, and how the absence of that kind of accountability is part of what the issue is with squad members and elected progressives who have disappointed so many on the left over the last few years. And so I wanted to get your read on what this latest dust-up with Senator Nina Turner and the Congressional Progressive Caucus means to you. I've talked about it a great deal outside of the context of bad faith, but for bad faith listeners who don't know, the Congressional Progressive Caucus chose to endorse Shontel Brown, the moderate corporate-funded candidate running for re-election in Ohio's 11th district, over Nina Turner, who lost narrowly in the special election last August by about 3,000 votes. Individual members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus endorsed her last year, and at least Cori Bush seems to still be supporting Nina Turner this time around. For the Congressional Progressive Caucus as a whole, led, of course, by Pramila Jayapal, who hails from your state, has chosen instead to endorse Shontel Brown. Shontel was only recently let into the Congressional Progressive Caucus about a month ago in a move that now seems, in retrospect, it seems to be all about kind of laying the groundwork for this endorsement. Similarly, she recently tweeted about her support for Medicare for All, and Pramila Jayapal tweeted about how happy she was to have another supporter of Medicare for All in the caucus. Again, that seems to just be setting the ground for a justification for why the CPC would go ahead and endorse the obviously more moderate candidate. What do you think this means for candidates like Senator Turner or others who are trying to or have tried in the past to run within the Democratic Party and change things from the inside?
I think in many ways, the fact that the Pramila Jayapal-led Congressional Progressive Caucus has endorsed Shontel Brown, despite her naked ties to the billionaire class and despite the kind of corporate-funded campaign that she and the corporate Democrats ran against Nina Turner last year, it really is a logical progression of where the so-called progressive wing of the Democratic Party has been. I mean, all along, the Progressive Caucus, especially under Pramila Jayapal's leadership, but to lesser or greater degrees even from the squad members, they've provided a cover for the Biden administration and Biden and Harris and the corporate Democrats like Pelosi and Schumer and others to carry out essentially a corporate agenda. So every time there was a failure or betrayal, whichever way you want to call it, on $15 an hour, on Medicare for All, on Build Back Better, each time Jayapal and the Progressive Caucus have provided cover to the Biden regime. Jayapal has gone as far as saying that, and this is a quote from her, quote, "It has been a very good relationship," and quote, talking about this idea of, negotiating in the back rooms between the Biden administration Progressive Caucus and very, disingenuously presenting as this is the best that you can do. This is, and not only that the best you can do, the narrative is this is the smartest thing you could be doing. It is not smart to go outside that framework of the Democratic Party without, making sure you're in the good books of the powers that be. That's a smart way to make change. Well, but they haven't succeeded in making change. This has been tried out, and that is why actually one of the reasons why there's such a obviously.
She's talking about trying to establish anything outside of the main two parties. The difficulties, she is a socialist, and she's talking about doing anything outside of the Democratic Party. I know she's got a heavy accent. I guess I probably should slow it down. I'll get it back down to regular speed. Her dress looks like her couch. She is, a true Indian woman. Yeah, she wears very interesting clothes, and she has very interesting draperies, and she is a true socialist. She's an actual elected official who is an actual socialist. Welcome to the show. Cheers, cheers. Ah, where we get buzzed and talk news.
The whole story, but one part of the story of why you're seeing such a historic resurgence of the labor movement with young workers, Gen Z workers leading the way, is because this is the generation that has felt blocked on so many avenues. The BLM movement, which was incredibly historic, but
I support anything outside of the establishment of what we've been doing for a long time here. I very much, I honestly support any push towards anything away from what we're doing. I would say I was 10 years ago, 5 years ago when Bernie first ran, I was more of a true socialist. But at this point, I would take any massive change. Like I am open to any massive change, but we need change. We definitely need change. The straight crony capitalism with which we're operating is killing the planet, killing each other. It's horrible.
In terms of what the leadership was provided was not actually commensurate with the strength of the movement. The young people have felt blocked on the electoral arena, and the whole thing that's unfolding between Nina Turner and Chantal Brown is also a sign of that. And so militant labor struggle is what young people are starting to discover. Obviously, there's a long way to go. But I'll also say this other thing is that this also
that's young people are starting to become more and more young people who consider themselves socialists, communists, and as that style gets, more and more young people get into the labor market, it could be recipe for actual change. It could actually happen. So in the next 10 years, with things being more stressed out and inflate, like just stuff like right now, be ready for it.
The idea, Nina Turner and others who are well-meaning people, but who themselves have in turn given cover to the failures of the Squad and the Progressive Caucus, also is, showing up now because, the best way and the smartest way, in my view, is to call out and expose the betrayals that happen and not actually sort of provide cover for each other when those things happen.
So would that be your advice to Senator Turner and perhaps even India Walton at this time to say, look, you were so obviously openly and publicly disrespected, but not just the Democratic Party, but those who purport to be the progressive members of the Democratic Party in the case of Senator Turner's race. And your response should be not to kind of try to play nice and kind of keep your head down and keep the fight going on, but to use this, to point to this as an example of exactly why your kind of leadership is needed?
Absolutely. And in fact, I would even add to that something that actually I'm reminded by the coverage that you did, Brianna, when you went on the ground in Nina Turner's district, talked to a lot of people, a lot of our constituents. And one story, but obviously this is an anecdotal, but I think it's reflective of the overall approach that's being used, which is what I disagree with, which is that it's not enough, for example, for Nina Turner in her heart to stand for $15 an hour Medicare for all, taxing the Wall Street. It's not enough to stand for that or for that program to be written somewhere on the website. So anecdotally, you were talking to a woman who's a constituent of Turner in that district, and she said, well, I was a Bernie supporter and I love Bernie's agenda, but I had no idea that Nina Turner stood for these things. And so really, the kind of campaign you need to run, if you're a progressive who's genuinely, if the left, and it's not about any one person, if the left wants to make serious breakthroughs in this period, then the demands and the program have to be front and center, and you have to fight for it. Go to every door in your district and talk about why it's in their interest to support your campaign, because you're going to be fighting for those things. And not that you are going to be doing it yourself, but that you're using your campaign as a vehicle to mobilize working people, trade union members, non-unionized workers to actually fight for these things, for us to get organized using this campaign. And if we win, using our electoral seats in order to do all of that. And ultimately, the reason people like Turner don't do that is not because it's some disagreement on some technical aspect of how to run the campaign. It's a political thing. If you keep talking about these demands, you will become enemy number one of the ruling class and also of those who are not exactly Nancy Pelosi, but who are the politicians who are giving cover to her while also speaking from both sides of their mouth. You're going to anger all of them. I mean, in 2019, let's not forget, when we were up for our second re-election, at that time, many of the local proteges of Pramila Jayapal, these two council members who are on the city council, who were on the city council at that time, Teresa Mosqueda and Lorena Gonzalez, they both, famously ran an opponent against me, saying that I was not being nice, that they generally agreed with what I stood for, but I was not being nice. And so they were going to bring in supposedly this nice guy, whatever. But the point is that we could have at that time said, oh my God, we don't want to be in your bad books. Let's somehow get united, whatever. But what that would have taken, having unity with these self-described Democratic Party progressives means giving up on your working class agenda, not really fighting for it. And it's a very tricky thing, because many of these progressives say that they stand for those things. Every so often, Pramila Jayapal will tweet out, it's time for Medicare for all. But, more and more people will respond to her on Twitter and say, okay, but what did you do? Like when it was time to fight for it, you gave Biden cover. How does that work?
Yeah, and so this was the subject of my Rising a few days ago, and I think a lot of people who listen to the show probably watched that, or my radar rather, on Rising, so I won't belabor the point. But this was a tipping point for a lot of people, because a lot of people, like me, I know that
I'm not going to watch Rising just because she's on it. Please.
That David Sirota and the folks over The Lever were taking notes on this stuff too, because they published an article to this effect the same day as my radar. Pramila Jayapal seems to have been behind multiple moments of capitulation by the left flank in Congress over the course of the past year plus of the Biden administration. So whether it was the force the vote moment where she was out on multiple podcasts, I'm sorry, frankly, lying. I don't know what other word there is to use. I don't know why I would try to be polite and cover that up. Lying about the prospect of Kevin McCarthy becoming Speaker of the House if they were to force the vote over Nancy Pelosi becoming Speaker of the House, whether it was around a $15 minimum wage, which people like AOC represented was where they were going to, quote, use their political capital. It was reported that she was the one that basically busted up the group of progressives who were considering holding the line and forcing the vote over a $15 minimum wage. And the same was true over the bifurcation of the Build Back Better bill, and that there was a group of people that said absolutely not. I mean, AOC was calling out that if you bifurcate these bills, if you split the human infrastructure bill up from the traditional infrastructure bill, there's no way that you can guarantee that the human infrastructure bill will pass. Pramila Jayapal not only went along with it, but said she expressed no regrets after the human infrastructure bill was dead on arrival. And this instance with Nina Turner seems to be the tipping point for a lot of people to say, not only am I no longer going to invest in the Democratic Party at all, but I am also willing to openly call out Pramila Jayapal as someone who seems to be the architect of a lot of the left's failures over the course of the past 2 years. As someone who has kind of come up in Washington politics alongside Pramila Jayapal, I wonder if this is something that you saw coming and whether you have any insights as someone who has had a much closer up view of her political trajectory. Is this surprising to you? Do you agree with kind of the narrative that's out there at this point that says she is angling for a leadership position and that's what's motivating these behaviors?
Well, I have not talked to her personally about these things, although I have had many conversations with her. And in fact, we have actually worked alongside each other, but on terms that where I was very clear that we are fighting for the working class, and to the extent that any given political figure or figure from the labor movement labor leadership wants to fight on that agenda, we welcome anybody, but we're not going to bend to their sort of insider game. In that way, we have worked together on various things, and I cannot divine her intentions, in her mind. But I think in general, I can say that the trajectory that she and many other, self-described progressives have been, it is that route, and so I think just to clarify to a lot of people where sometimes debates can break down because people, may agree or disagree on what the intentions of a certain political figure are. That's why I often say, set the intentions aside. Let's look at the outcomes of their political approach. The outcome of a political approach where a given politician or elected figure or somebody with some real influence is unwilling to break from the business as usual of the Democratic Party, the only outcome, regardless of their intentions, is a sellout. So that's all we need to know. And so ultimately for us, it is not about for working people, who are watching this, trying to figure out, many people who are watching your show are trying to figure out, okay, what's my role in this? What should I do? And often,
Yes. That is often what people are trying to figure out. The biggest thing that people are trying to figure out.
People say things which I don't actually agree with, which is things like, oh, you should all run for office. I mean, it's not about just accumulating numbers of people who run for office. Look, now over 100, maybe 150 people have run and won office on the DSA, on the name of DSA. But what change are we seeing? That's the question. So ultimately, the discussion should be about the political approach, and the political approach that, unfortunately, not only Jayapal, but even the squad, who are the leftmost members in Congress, the approach that they have used, that hasn't worked. Every step of the way they have given in. And you correctly pointed out also the question of the election of Speaker as Pelosi. Even at that time, Socialist Alternative, and I said, actually, at this moment, the squad should be holding back, publicly talking about how they do not agree with Pelosi's deeply and openly corporate agenda. One thing you cannot accuse of Pelosi of is hiding her corporate agenda. She's clear. She is very pro-capitalist. So what are not only self-described progressives, but self-described socialists supposed to do at that moment? They are supposed to absolutely hold the line. And that does mean, drawing, it's a struggle between you and those politicians, and it becomes extremely uncomfortable. But that is where the rub lies. That is what a lot of people who are elected are unwilling to do. Ultimately, regardless of their intentions, all their good intentions die a painful death when they discover that, oh, for me to be a genuinely a working class elected representative who does not sell out means I'm going to make these powerful people angry, and they're going to make my daily life uncomfortable. That's where all the good intentions die. Then it's one day at a time. That is what I'm saying. Lots of well-intentioned people end up doing this. So that is why we cannot have just this dead-end strategy of getting progressives elected in the Democratic Party. The working class needs a party of its own where we...
Fucking right it does. Absolutely it does. People's Party, Green Party, whatever it is, the Democratic Party is a corporate party, and we need a working people's party. Which is why I say vote third party, because the two parties, Republicans pretend like they're for most of America, and Democrats pretend like they're for the workers, but really neither one of them care about us. So they're only for corporate interests.
Decide the agenda, and we hold our elected figures accountable.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Senator Turner says a true and honestly not that harsh, given the context, thing about voting for Biden over Trump being like being satisfied with half a bowl of shit instead of an entire bowl of shit. And that's the thing that draws all of this ire. I mean, at that point, why not double down? At that point, why not say the true thing about who you are? Because I think that people can smell kind of the indecision and the fence sitting in it all. And you can say what you want about Donald Trump, and people should say a lot of things about Donald Trump. But I think when there was all of this confusion about how he was withstanding all of this negative press he was getting about every scandal that would come flying out of his mouth every 4 to 8 hours, part of it was the sheer volume of the things made it difficult to stick. But part of it is that he didn't back down. He was who he was. He lived in his truth. And people who disagreed with him or thought, oh, that's uncouth, I would prefer he not be embarrassing in those ways, felt that he was a truth teller because he seemed to rest comfortably in the space that he had created for himself. And it is frustrating that progressives who are morally in the right, unlike Donald Trump, feel reluctant to do exactly that.
This is Monday.com CRM, a CRM you'll actually want to use. Capture and collect all your leads in one place. Manage leads throughout the entire sales cycle so you don't lose an opportunity again. With only one click, you can see everything about any account or client, all in a single view. Send and receive emails directly from Monday CRM. And log any call, meeting, or activity to stay on track. Use code-free automations to make your CRM work for you, and not the other way around. And finally, keep track of everything at a glance, from deal status to your team's performance, with dashboards that you can easily customize to suit you. Monday CRM.
Okay, that was perfect timing for me, huh? Oh, man. I am pain pilling it up again tonight. Stupid fucking teeth. I get the dentist in the morning. All right. Dentist in the morning.
No, just on that, I think that you brought up a very important point because, it sort of also points towards what is about to happen. I mean, the press of the ruling class, I mean, this is not socialist outlets, New York Times, CNN, all of these outlets are predicting an absolute shellacking of the Democratic Party in the midterm elections. Biden is at an all-time low approval rating in all of his presidency. So what does that show? This shows that the right wing is going to right wing and right populists are going to make significant gains because of this whole strategy used by progressives, giving cover to Biden. And there you go, working people are more and more disenchanted from politics. And who gains? It's the right wing. It's big business. So ultimately, those are the consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things, as people are increasingly, at least listeners of this show, I think are increasingly leaning toward there's no point in running within the party way of thinking. There is still this question about accountability, because for those who are already elected or those who might be elected in the future, folks keep asking me on my call-in show and elsewhere, okay, but we really admire the example of Kshama Sawant. She is obviously accountable to Socialist Alternative and is faithful to the group's agenda. How do you guarantee that accountability? How do you have someone like the squad members who have this relationship with Democrats, the DSA, but don't seem to feel any responsibility to do what DSA might recommend? It feels like the tail is wagging the dog in this instance. You had these little moments where there was discussion of whether Jabal Mobile was going to be censored or kicked out for some of his positions with respect to Israel-Palestine. But other than that, it seems as though there's a real interest in basically making nice with these representatives who have brought so much attention and so much more membership to DSA. And that has resulted in a kind of unwillingness to let the DSA membership really lead the way in terms of setting a policy agenda. Is there any mechanism that keeps you accountable, or is it just a matter of your kind of personal will and investment in the ideology of the organization?
Well, certainly personal will and integrity and sacrifice are crucial, but you could never hope to build, any viable working class party just on the basis of personal moral purity or any such idea. So I think this is a very important question that your viewers are asking, like, how do we do that? And what is it about Socialist Alternative that makes our office in Seattle accountable? It is everything to do with politics and the political approach that Socialist Alternative takes. And so that is what we need to draw out from our example, not so much about making about one person and how great that person is or whatever, but more about how viable this idea is, that if you have a membership organization, political organization, where working people actually have the ability to hold their elected leaders accountable. And I don't mean just elected leaders in Congress or city councils. I mean elected leaders of the organization, So in terms of DSA, the lack of accountability is not only in terms of holding someone like AOC or Jamal Bowman accountable, it's also holding the leaders of the National Political Committee accountable, of the DSA's NPC accountable. And so where Socialist Alternative is different is precisely on those aspects. I mean, we are a genuinely democratically organized organization, with a democratic organization to the root, meaning our members have not just in theory, but in actuality, the right to ask questions about decisions made by the leadership on various things. We have a vibrant I was going to say culture, but really it's a practice born out of a scientific understanding of what works and what doesn't work. So a vibrant practice of debate and discussion, ongoing questions, and it's not just about which race to run in and how to hold our elected leaders accountable, but also about what should our role be in the Starbucks struggle, in the Amazon union struggle. How should we, what is the best that we can offer to help push the working class struggles further? This doesn't come just from the brains of a few people at the top. It comes from having an organization where members are encouraged to participate in discussion and debate and actually vote on meaningful things, and not just say they have a vote, but actually play a role in all of this, and strengthen each member's political understanding by urging them to politically educate themselves. This is very different from the approach that, unfortunately, that most of DSA uses. And ultimately, what you saw was quite a shameful moment where, rather than hold Jamal Bowman accountable for the real things, objections that were brought up by the membership, a big section of the national leadership decided to actually go after a working group where, you may or may not agree with the specific positions of that particular working group, but that is a real attack on democracy. Your organization is actually stronger if you have if the leadership has the political confidence to defend their position without taking this kind of organizational step against, undemocratic organizational step against a working group. And it was not just by itself, it didn't happen out of nowhere. It is symptomatic of the idea that if you don't have a democratic organization, then what ends up happening is that you have the leadership, sections of the leadership giving cover to the squad, and then the squad giving cover to Biden, and then Biden giving cover to Wall Street. Ultimately, you become, whether unwittingly or not, you become a conduit for a very destructive status quo. And that's why ultimately it does come down to how your organization is set up. And that's why when we talk about a party for the working class, you will never catch me just saying we need a third party. Well, that's not the point. The point is having I always give the example of India. India has multitude of parties, but not one of them represents the working class. It's not about any alternative to the Democrats and Republicans. It's about what kind of party we want. So we want a party where it's an actual membership organization where members have the right to discuss and debate. And ultimately, what ideas come to the fore should be decided on the worthiness of those ideas in pushing forward a working class agenda. And working people, and we should have the confidence that working people, once all the issues are presented to them, will have the understanding of what's in their own interest.
Yeah. I mean, while you're talking about some of the differences between the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, and Socialist Alternative, it occurs to me that some listeners obviously won't have listened to your earlier episode and might not be super familiar with Socialist Alternative as an organization. How would you characterize Socialist Alternative to folks who are curious about what it is and how it does differ from the DSA?
All right.
Well, in one of the main...
This is the last explanation we're going to get from her, and then we will move on to the Joe Rogan Experience, I believe. Right? That was next. Yep. Joe Rogan talking to David Patman about censorship, and then police for a minute. And then, yeah, after the police, I got a few other clips from the week, but finish up with this, and then we got Joe Rogan before the police. And I can't do Joe Rogan or the police story on YouTube, so I will be switching after this to Twitch only, because I can't show either of these things on YouTube. Even just going back and forth between those two things might get me kicked off.
It differs from the DSA, and I don't think that it's like an either or, like as many people might know. I am a member of both Socialist Alternative and DSA, as are you. Exactly. So, we don't see them as an either or, just very sort of in a nutshell, the DSA is more of a big tent kind of socialist organization where different trends of political ideas exist. And then, of course, you can have debates, but then you can also have specific working groups where maybe certain trends are represented, or caucuses. You have various caucuses which represent different lines of thinking, where there's sort of broad agreement or organization-wide, but then there are specific
And this is the end of my CBD roaches, if you care. All of my end of my CBD roaches that I will be smoking with some wonderful wax. And yeah, that's all I got right now, so that's what I'm rolling with.
questions that different groups may or may not agree on. Socialist Alternative now has a caucus inside DSA, and Socialist Alternative by itself is it's a much smaller organization. It's a different kind of organization. It's not this kind of different trends kind of organization. It's a very clear Marxist and Trotskyist organization, and the level of agreement is much, the degree is much greater inside Socialist Alternative than inside DSA. And that's why we don't, when we talk about a new party for the working class, we don't present Socialist Alternative as that party, because we know that not everyone in the working class is going to agree with every single thing that we're talking about. Many will, and they will join our organization, like you and I have joined the organization. However, we want what we want is a larger organization for the working class, a new party for the working class, where organizations like Socialist Alternative and DSA can be part of that. But we do insist on democratic structures and democratic organization, because that is the only thing. I mean, it's not by itself, it won't ensure, your starting point of your question was, what's the guarantee? Well, there are no guarantees per se. I fully expect that even in such a party, all kinds of terrible things could happen. But the point is, are we setting ourselves up to be able to set up the best, to be set up in the best way possible to hold elected leaders accountable? And when they betray us, can we recall them? So, for example, inside Socialist Alternative, we have a very clear idea that our elected leaders, and I don't just mean city council members, any of our elected leaders, we have an elected structure throughout the organization, and any of our leaders are recallable if we have evidence that there is wrongdoing, or if their political point of view has not benefited the organization and has hurt the working class, and so on. So in that way, Socialist Alternative also works, because it's not only that I am accountable to Socialist Alternative as an organization is accountable to the working class. And that's the lens through which we view our work. So if we feel like we have fallen short, then we will assess ourselves as an organization and try to correct path if we feel like we have made some mistakes, or if we didn't go far enough in terms of what we need to do, and so on and so forth. And the other thing, which is not incidental actually, is that we all are elected, people like myself who are elected to outside positions, we pledge to take the average worker's wage. So the city council right now pays me more than $146,000. I take home only $40,000, and the rest after taxes is put into a solidarity fund, out of which we donate to strike funds of various unions, and we help struggles of social movements like Black Lives Matter.
So you bring up this issue of
that's awesome. She takes home $40,000 a year, and gives the rest to socialist or to mutual aid, essentially. That is awesome. All right. Well, I gotta set this up. Gonna clip this out, and all right, marker the next story here, and say goodnight, guys. Gotta end the YouTube. I can't show Joe Rogan and I can't show John Oliver on YouTube, so the next two things I was gonna do, I can't do on YouTube. So good night, YouTube. Thanks for hanging out. Please join me on Twitch. YouTube is, the next story is about Joe Rogan and censorship, and I can't show it because YouTube will censor it. So